Morning, homies. Today we're going to be talking about boundaries. And if you're not familiar with the word boundaries, what these are, and we're not talking about boundaries necessarily in a physical sense, like, oh, there's a wall here, I can't get through it. We're talking about it in like the psychological and the relationship sense, meaning that you place a boundary on what you're going to allow yourself to do and what you will allow others to do to you. And boundaries are extremely healthy and a necessary thing to have because not everybody in the world means you well. Not every situation in the world is good for you. And if your boundaries aren't in a healthy place, then what ends up happening is you leave yourself open for manipulation, to be taken advantage of, to be victimized. And a lot of bad situations come out of not having healthy boundaries for yourself and those that you interact with. So what I want to talk about today are like the two different primary types of boundaries, right? Where they kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum, where you have rigid boundaries. And rigid boundaries are where somebody is basically overly cautious or unable to allow themselves to have a close relationship with another person, where like they don't allow themselves to get close to another person, to learn more about them. They don't allow themselves to share things about themselves, and they're closed off from the world. And on the other hand, you have porous boundaries. And these are people that overshare information. They allow too many people into their lives. They're kind of gullible, and like they feed into whatever is being told to them. They don't have the ability to say no to things. And we have these two ends of the spectrum, right? Where you have rigid boundaries, porous boundaries. And of course, there can be like positives and negatives to both, but personally, I think that our goal should be somewhere in the middle. With restrictive boundaries, with the rigid boundaries, you are less likely to get taken advantage of, which is a good thing. Like you have less of a chance of being having somebody come over and screw you over, manipulate you out of stuff. There's a much less chance of this happening because you don't really mess with a lot of people. You're not getting close to people or even allow them to get close enough to you to really cause any damage. But with that comes the loneliness, the inability to have anybody who you care deeply for and who deeply cares about you, because you never allow a relationship like that to take place. And on this side, with the porous boundaries, you have it's easy for you to foster relationships, right? Where it's easy for you to be close to people. And the reason I say that in quotations is because what you open yourself up to is like, you may think that you have a close relationship with somebody, but in reality you could be being manipulated or used. And sometimes the relationship is much more one-sided because like you're giving more. So like, on the one hand, you open yourself up for to be around and have more experiences with people, but also you're much more likely to be taken advantage of and become a doormat for this person, right? And to me, we got to meet in the middle with it, right? You want to be like somewhere in here where like you're cautious enough to understand that like not everybody in the world is going to want the best for you. Some people are going to want money out of you. Some people are going to want what, like, favors, like whatever that may be, like whether it's monetary, emotionally, transportation, like whatever the favor might be. There's a lot of things out there, but you don't want to leave yourself open to being somebody's like tool, basically. But at the same time, like, you do want to allow yourself to be able to have close connections with people. Like, that's some of the most rewarding experiences that we can have in our lives, is when we allow ourselves to be open to experience and see what's going on with people, to like hear what they have to say, to share our thoughts with them. And this is also kind of what helps us develop as a person too. Our personal development comes from, if you guys have heard the phrase sharpening iron, excuse me, where basically it means that through your interactions with people that are like-minded or like progressing, or maybe they're even farther ahead than you are, through your interactions with them, you grow and develop as a person too, because like your guys is bouncing back from one another starts to create a cycle of improvement. And this is where the phrase iron sharpening iron comes from. In order to develop as a person, you need to be around good people in order to become more, in order to develop, because we don't grow in a vacuum. Like, we're in a lot of ways a product of the things that we're around, and the people that we're around make a huge difference with that. And what happens when we talk about boundaries is a lot of people can feel guilty for setting up boundaries. They feel bad for telling people no, feel bad for saying that, like, I'm not going to put up with this, or I'm not going to allow this to go on. And you can't do that to yourself. I feel like any person that is in a successful situation, or in a situation where they're happy and healthy with the spot in life that they're in, they had to have set up some sort of boundary, whether it's with not allowing somebody to talk to them a certain way, because the things that we hear in our interactions with people matter, like if we're around constant negativity, if we're having people putting us down, telling we're not worth crap, telling us we'll never be anything, they're not trying to grow themselves, and they're kind of spiraling downwards. We're a large product of the company that we keep, and if that's all that you're around, then what do you naturally feel like is going to happen to you? Like if this is in the environment that you're in, and that's all that you have around you, it's going to be extremely difficult to thrive if that's what you're surrounded by. And so sometimes we have to put up boundaries with people, sometimes people that we've known for a long time, and people can feel bad about that, right? Like they can feel like, oh, I'm being fake because like I've known this person for a long time and now I'm cutting them off. And that's an immature way to think, not to put anybody down, but I really want you to look at it. And I'm saying this and I'm trying to be as truthful as I possibly can, because I don't want people to fall into these traps. I think that sometimes we don't always hear the truth, like that. Sometimes people feel like they have to sugarcoat stuff, because they do, because that we talked about that earlier, man, about that video that I put out about most people actually not being prepared for the truth, and I wholeheartedly believe that. But on this channel, I want to be honest as hell with you guys. I want to be real, so you hear this stuff from somebody that has no personal stake in what's going on with you, and so you can really reflect on it, because I genuinely think it makes the world a better place when we conduct ourselves with like a certain sense of like respect and honesty. I think it's beneficial for everybody. So I want people to reflect on like the immaturity of that mindset, of like, it's not good for me to cut people off because I've known them for forever. That's not the case at all, man. Like, in order to grow, you have to shed certain things. It's like the metaphor of the phoenix, man, that like has to burn itself, like it completely immolates and burns itself alive so it can like grow into something greater. And I feel like that's the case with people as well, man, where like there are certain parts of ourselves and certain things that we're surrounded by that we have to burn off if we're gonna grow. Like certain things can't stay with us forever, and that's just how it is. And if you want them to stay, then you're gonna be carrying around dead weight and baggage that's gonna make that trip to the top a lot harder. You can carry it if you want to, but sometimes those things can really impede your progress to the point where you can't move forward anymore, and that's something to be careful of. But just be mindful, man, of assessing what's going on with you, like taking a tally of like where you're at with your life, with your relationships, and if you have healthy boundaries, or if you need to set those up, because those can kind of make or break the situations that we're in. So that's all I want to kind of speak on with the boundaries. Like there's a lot more, of course, like any topic you can always go into more, but I think that covered a lot of what I want to say right now, man. So I hope it gave you guys something to think about. Of course, like have a discussion with me in the comments, man. I always like hearing from you, and I'll talk to you in the next video.